They say that you never have the chance to make a second first impression. And for writers, that is the opening line. There's a reason that that first line is one of the most rewritten sentences of the entire novel. It's because we as authors know instinctively that if we don't capture the reader's attention with that opening line, we probably will lose them forever. They're not going to continue to read if that opening line doesn't capture their attention. So what I'm going to speak about today is that opening line and how you can make it a reader capturing line and encourage them to keep reading past that first line. So join me today and we'll talk about how to craft that perfect opening line.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the Julia Amante channel. If we are just meeting, I'm Julia Amante. I'm a women's fiction author, and I'm happy to be here every Friday to share the tips and what I've learned along the way. So if you are just joining me and at any point during this video you find it helpful, please hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel so that you can come back every week for the next video. All right, so let's get started talking about that opening line. In a world that's filled with distractions and apps and phones and notifications, it becomes increasingly difficult for us to be able to first even get readers to open a book and read it, much less keep them reading. So what do? We have to have at least for the readers, the people that do like to read, something that captures their attention and keeps them reading, but at least grabs them at the beginning so that your book has a chance at being read. Is there a secret to crafting an opening line? Well, not really. It just involves good writing. And so what I'm going to talk about, or I'm going to share with you today, are some steps to create a perfect opening line, but also just to use your skills to create good writing that's going to keep the reader even past that opening line, hopefully to the end of your book. The first thing you want to do is hook them, right? And so what do hooks do? Hooks grab them, right? They grab them and they pull the reader in. And the way that you're going to do that is honestly and without tricking them. So you don't want to start with something, even if it sounds really good. You don't want to start with a murder, for example, if that's not what your book is about. You don't want to start with something or some car chase or something that, just does sound exciting. But then once the reader gets past that, you're like, okay, well, that was the day my neighbor got murdered, but let's go ahead and talk about the rest of the novel, which is about how this character goes on a trip through South America, right? That's not really fair. It's not fair to the reader, and it's also dishonest. So you don't want something that is really sensational that's going to capture their attention, but you do want something that's interesting enough that does relate to your story. So what is the most exciting part of your novel? And that's what you want to start with. You want to start with something interesting. It could be something that is in the middle of your novel, right? That you move to the front. It could be, hopefully it's not the end, but it could be. It could be an ending that takes us back into a story, right? Sort of as a flashback that goes back to explain how we got to where we're at. But it could be something at the very beginning. How is the most interesting way to start that story? You want to create that hook that grabs your reader and gets them interested in your story, not a crazy hook that is untrue to the rest of your book. And what can that be? It can be an unusual situation. It could just be your voice. Maybe you have such a great voice or a great storytelling voice, or your main character has such a great voice that it creates that interest without being gimmicky or without, lying to them about what type of book you're writing. So if we look at something like George Orwell's 1984, how did he start the novel? It was a bright, cold day in April and the clocks were striking 13. That's his opening line. So is that interesting? Well, yeah, because it creates curiosity. Like, okay, well, there are no 13s on, unless you're doing military time, but there are no 13s right on the clock. So that by itself is like, okay, well, something is odd here. This novel is taking me to a strange place because there's something odd about this. So we're expecting something unusual, and we're going to keep reading to see what else is unusual about this place the setting where this novel is going to take place. The hook fits the story and it makes us ask a question, and really that's all it takes. It's a good hook, right? Now, the second thing that we want to look at is your voice and the tone. That's another way to hook your reader. And, we don't really need to look much further than like Harry Potter, right? So, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Street were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. Okay, so that immediately makes us kind of question what is normal? What is it about these people that is normal or maybe not so normal? Okay, it makes us want to know a little bit more. So the opening line becomes like a little microcosm of your story world. It creates interest, it creates curiosity. Could be funny if your book is funny. It could be kind of gritty if that's what your book is about, but it should give us an idea of but through that voice, through that tone, of what the rest of your book is going to be like. You don't want to start with humor if it's going to be a murder, right? Or a thriller. That's probably not going to fit. So you want it to fit, is what I'm saying, the rest of your story. Okay, a third way that you might want to start your novel is through some tension or conflict. So if your book is going to have tension and conflict throughout the novel, then this is a great way to start, right? So if we look at someone like Stephen King, so I'm not a huge Stephen King fan, I just don't like horror, but I know that he is a master at creating tension and conflict. And so this opening line here, the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. This is from his book, The Gunslinger. That creates instant tension. Why? Well, because we don't know why this guy is fleeing. We also don't know why this slinger is chasing him. So immediately it creates questions in our mind. We can sense the danger, maybe the obsession that this guy has in following this other guy, so that we want to know more, right? So it's the perfect hook to hook us in and make us want to follow and see what's going to happen. So you don't need to spell everything out at the opening, but you can start with some conflict or some tension if that's what is going to get us into the book, and if it's going to be explained later, like who are these people, what's going on, why is one fleeing, why is one chasing him, okay? Now the fourth way for us to hook the reader and have a really great opening line is to use either emotion or curiosity. Now, emotion is wonderful because if you can hook your reader emotionally, they're going to stay with you for the entire novel. If you can make the reader feel fear or nostalgia or surprise or any kind of emotion, they're going to immediately become attached to your book, to your characters, and to the situation that you're presenting. And you've probably all read a novel where that has happened, right? Where you became emotionally attached immediately to a character. And that kept you reading because you wanted to know what was going to happen to this person, or you wanted to explore that emotion that you felt. Now, one of my favorite writers, Susan Elizabeth Phillips, in It Had to Be You, she starts with Phoebe Somerville outraged everyone by bringing a French poodle and a Hungarian lover to her father's funeral. Okay, so what does she achieve with this opening line? First of all, it's kind of funny. Second of all, it gives us the voice that we're going to hear throughout the novel. It creates a little bit of conflict, right? Because we hear that there's going to be some kind of problem here with this woman showing up to a funeral with this Hungarian lover and the French poodle. We're a little amused, and so that's a good thing because, we know that these are the type of books that she writes, that they're kind of a little bit funny and that the character is kind of quirky in some way. And so immediately we know we're in a Susan Elizabeth Phillips novel and that this is going to be a good read. And she uses her voice, she uses the tone, she uses the characters in order to get us there and with a perfect opening first line. The next thing is to use your genre, but don't be afraid to actually stretch the genre a little bit. You should know what are the expectations of your genre for opening lines and for the novel itself. But we can push it a little bit, right? Because it makes it a little interesting. If we know that one type of opening is accepted or liked, we can play with it a little bit, either combine it with another type of genre. But you want to stay real to your genre as much as you can. One of my favorite opening lines. So again, literary writing is going to be a little different. So I love Russian writers. It's one of the reasons that I liked reading was I liked a lot of the Russian writers. So Tolstoy's Anna Karenina starts with, all happy families are alike. each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. You might have heard that before. I love that opening line so much that I actually used it as a section opener for one of my sections in my novel Let Us Begin. Why? Because I was going to discuss dysfunction. That whole section of, well, the whole book is about dysfunctional families and things that happen. And so I just thought that was a perfect quote to use from this novel. Why? Because it's a great opening line. How true is it, right? It creates a drama. It creates, it's about personal struggle and human complexity. It's I think Leo Tolstoy put, it had everything in that opening line. And why is it perfect? Because he was writing literary fiction. We can sit back and know that we're going to read an epic literary novel just because of that opening line. Now, the sixth tip, I guess, that I want to give you about opening lines is that it doesn't always come at the beginning. So don't spend 2 years trying to create the perfect opening line. Start your book, write your novel, and then go back, because sometimes an opening line doesn't come at the beginning. It comes after you've written your novel. It comes after you've rewritten and rewritten and rewritten your opening line until it matches the rest of your book. You can get the tone, you can get the voice, you can get the feel of the novel, you can get the genre right. You can get all of it right after you've written the entire novel and you know what your book is about. It can even be thematic in a way, right? That opening line. But sometimes it does come after deep reflection, and that's okay. We want to start with something, start with an opening line we think is going to be good, and then write our novel, not get stuck on that, and then come back to it later. So don't be afraid to rewrite your opening line many times. Like I said, it's one of the most rewritten parts of almost everybody's novel. So just to share with you what some experts say about this, Noah Lukeman, who was literary agent for many, many years, wrote a book called The First 5 Pages. He wasn't just talking about the opening line, he was talking about the beginning of the book, but what he says does apply to opening lines as well. And what he says is that most agents and editors make up their mind on whether they're going to like that book within the first few paragraphs, and some within the first few lines, right? So it does make that opening of the novel. So the opening isn't just that first line. Of course, this is what's going to hook us in there, but the opening could be the first paragraph, the first few paragraphs, or the first few pages. So you don't need to feel so much pressure to get that opening line right. But again, that opening line is like the hook that's going to get them to read. And they might read the first few paragraphs, and then they might read the first few pages, and then they might read the first chapter. And if you can get them to stay past that, you probably did pretty good opening your novel. Other experts, Chuck Wendig, for example, says, don't whisper, grab them by the collar. Lisa Crone, the author of Story Geniuses, encourages writers to use emotion to grab the reader immediately. Anne Lamont talks about voice, how the voice of the novel is what's really going to hook the reader and really get them to want to spend time with those characters and with that book. John McPhee says, start in the middle of your book. So decide wherever the middle is, and that's where you're going to start, because that's going to hook your reader the most. And Elmore Leonard says to never start with the weather. And I say, unless it's Snoopy, and then you can start with it was a dark and stormy night, right? Of course, I believe there are no don'ts. There isn't anything that you can't start with. If the weather happens to be amazing and it's going to impact the rest of your story, start however you want. Just make it interesting. Make sure that you have all the other elements in there, the hooks, the conflict, not all of them, but one of them at least, the emotions, all of that is going to draw the reader in. And with that said, you don't have to do it all. So your opening line doesn't have to have all of it. If it can have one of those elements, it's probably enough to hook your reader and bring them in to read the rest of your novel. So ask yourself these questions. Does this opening line reflect the essence of my novel? Will it intrigue the reader? Would I keep reading if this wasn't my book and I picked it up and I opened it and read that first line? Would it attract me enough to continue to read? And if the answer is no, that's when you need to continue rewriting and re-editing. Also, another suggestion is to have somebody else read it. Have your friends read it. Have your critique partners read it. Have someone else who is either a reader or a writer look at it and say, honestly, would you continue to read this? And if that first line is good and it does hook you enough to continue to read. Would you read my second? Would you continue and read that first paragraph? And after that first paragraph, would you continue to read to the next paragraph? So at any point that they say no, that's where your problem is, okay? So if they would read the first 3 paragraphs, but after that they're starting to lose interest, then that's where you need to do something, change something so that there is some interest there and they want to continue to read that first chapter. All right, so I hope that this helps you a little bit, helps you to get thinking about those opening lines, and it helps you to improve your opening lines by adding some of these elements and making your book a book that nobody wants to put down. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like you to please give the video a like. Please subscribe to the channel and share it on your social media accounts or anywhere else where you think it might be helpful to other writers. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.